occasions, but what he had done for her and what she had felt for him was nothing she could put into words. "A man friend?" Juliette pulled an aged photograph from inside the box before turning it over to read the inscription on the back. "George Mountcastle," she said. "He was a very handsome soldier. I did not know you had an American boyfriend before Papa." The tremor in Marcelle's hands worsened as she took the photo from her daughter and squinted at the image. It was no use. The face staring back at her was as blurred as the one that had lived inside her memory for over 7 decades. "He was not a boyfriend." Juliette rifled through the box, past the newspaper clippings and the letters and the keepsakes. "This one looks like a movie star," she said, pulling out another photograph and reading from the back of it. "Philippe Foster. Was he a boyfriend too?" "My goodness, Juliette." Marcelle shook her head and sighed. "There were no boyfriends, and I do not remember any Philippe." Juliette laughed as she tucked the photo back into the box before pulling out a yellowed newspaper clipping. "How about this one?" she asked, scanning over the article. "Max Neumann. He was a German. Do you remember him?" "No, I do not think so. But maybe—" Marcelle shook her head again, frustrated. Her memory had started failing her years ago. Names she couldn't put with faces, places that seemed both familiar and foreign at once. The term Alzheimer's had been tossed around lately, but Marcelle refused to listen. She would not allow her mind to be taken by a disease that had been named after a German. She was simply old. Her mind was tired. "It was a long time ago, Maman." Juliette refolded the article and placed it back into the box before closing the top. She was a perceptive woman, always in tune with the people around her and sensitive to their emotions. Nothing like her brother. "How about a cup of tea in the garden?" Marcelle's rose garden was almost as famous as her mother's had once been. Her mother had lost interest in gardening after the First War with the Germans, upon returning home to Soissons from Paris and finding nothing but rubble and weeds. Marcelle had planted a new garden to go with the home they had rebuilt, when the Germans had surrendered, a place where her mother could spend the rest of her days surrounded by a symphony of colors and the budding of new life. It was a mercy that her mother had passed before the Second World War, before the color had been drained from their lives once more. It would have destroyed her. Marcelle's teacup rattled against the saucer as she tried to place it onto the table beside her wheelchair. The garden was in full bloom, and as she watched a plump bumblebee bounce from bud to bud, she found herself defenseless against the memories that washed over her. "It was the summer of 1918, she said, as Juliette took the cup from her hands. "That was when I met him." "Maman, you don't have to do this." Juliette waved away her mother's words. "There is no reason for you to go back there." Marcelle's daughter was no stranger to war, or to German occupation. They rarely spoke of the war they had lived through together, and Marcelle had never shared her experiences of the First War with her daughter. The forgotten war. It was hard to believe a war that had toppled 4 imperial dynasties could be forgotten. "You should know what happened," Marcelle replied. "Once I am gone, there will be no one left to tell it." Juliette pulled the diary from beneath her chair and held it up in front of her mother. "It is all in here," she said. "I took a glance through this while I was preparing the tea, and it looks like this man, George, has already told your story." "What could he know about my story?" Marcelle huffed. "He barely knew me." "Shall we find out?" Juliette opened the journal and held it up so Marcelle could see that one lone sentence was scrawled across the middle of the front page. She squinted out of habit, but the ink ran together. It reads, "The real story of the Great War." Juliette turned the page, and Marcelle listened as her daughter brought life to the words and awakened memories that had long ago been put to sleep. The night the Germans had bombed Soissons at the start of the war in 1914. The cellar beneath her father's store where they'd taken shelter. The train station in Montmirail where she and her sister had volunteered as nurses. "How is this possible?" Marcelle whispered, interrupting her daughter's reading. "How could this man know all these things about me?"